Ordinary Days. Ordinary Days. Or what was Ordinary Days? Ordinary Days is a cult hit musical that you may know from that song. It's not that funny. That error was not that funny. It did not warrant that big of a laugh. Ordinary Days is a cult hit musical, which you may or may not know, but you definitely know the songs from it, like Fine, or Favorite Places, or Don't Want to Be Here, or I'll Be Here, Saturday Night at the Met. There's a lot of really great songs in that piece, and it's just a great musical. So I knew it from college because it was one of the first pieces that in a contemporary way was incredibly conversational, and I got to tell Adam that because Adam Gwon is our guest on the show today, and he is going to be discussing we're going to be discussing his whole career, of course, as always, but we were talking about his new cast album to his new musical, All the World's a Stage, which is out now and features some former guests of ours, Matt Rodin and Elizabeth Stanley, which is pretty cool. And I think that, he's written a slew of musicals, but we focused a lot here on Ordinary Days and All the World's a Stage. And of course, his history, because he was an actor first, actually, at NYU Tisch. And he pivoted to being a songwriter. And I think that there's something interesting that, you're not just because you went to college for something, or just because you decided that this path was going to be yours, the pivot was an interesting thing, and the person who inspired him was a really interesting story as well. So we get to talking all about that, which is really cool. And his mentorship with Stephen Flaherty and Lynn Ahrens, which is pretty amazing. As well as, this new cast album that he's really excited about, and I'm really excited about. I didn't get to see the production of All the World's a Stage this past spring in 2025, but Matt talked about it on the show with us, as did Elizabeth, and I'm really excited for everyone to get the chance to hear this cast album, because I think Adam is a really strong writer, and we had just a blast having him on the podcast. I've been a fan of his work for a long time already, so it was especially a joy to get the chance to chat with him and ask him my burning questions about being a composer in the theater, as well as a Tony nominator, and his take on the state of the industry and what he thinks of things right now. And yeah, I really enjoyed this episode, and I think you will as well. So without further ado, let's get to it. Here is Adam Gwon's I Want to Be Like You. 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 Welcome to another episode of I Want to Be Like You with Elbi Cespedes, introducing Adam Gwon.
Hey,
Thank you so much for being here. I mentioned to you this off camera, but I very much, when Dan reached out to me, I was like, oh, I know exactly who Adam Gwon is, because I had a book that I got at the Broadway flea market for $1 that was like contemporary music theater songs for men of a certain, whatever. And it was like this, but it wasn't like the anthology, singer's anthology. It was like this like specific book that had like 2 Ordinary Day songs in there, so I knew both of those. It had like Rock City from See Rock City. It had like I don't know if you know the song September of '92 by Jonathan Reed Gelt. Like it had all of these songs that I had never heard of before, and I dove deep into like each one of these avenues. So I very much knew like Favorite Places, and so I'm very familiar with your work already.
Thank you, Broadway Flea Market.
Yeah, right, exactly. But we start the podcast with the same question every time, and it is, who was your I Want to Be Like You when you were a kid?
Yes, I have a very nerdy answer to this question, which is the playwright and dramaturg James Magruder, who went on to write, or I guess adapt, the book for Head Over Heels. Oh, okay. And he also wrote this musical called Triumph of Love.
Oh, but I know Triumph of Love.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
But
we were just talking about it.
I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, and when I was a kid, he was the resident dramaturg at Baltimore Center Stage. Oh. And I didn't really know what that was, but for school, they would take us to all of the student matinees at Baltimore Center Stage, and we would get these study guides for each show that were put together by the guy, James Magruder, who had done all of this research and found photographs and all the history about, what the plays were about.
Right.
And I just thought it was so cool that someone's job was to dive into a play
Yeah.
and tell the audience like all about the background and the history,
Right.
and you might learn this and you might learn this.
Yeah.
So I was obsessed with this guy named James Magruder. I've never met him. James, if you're listening, find me on
Wow.
Instagram.
That's funny.
But yeah, that was my first kind of like.
And how old were you?
I was probably like 13, 14.
Wow.
Like a burgeoning theater nerd, I guess.
And you said he wrote Triumph of Love?
He wrote the book for it. Yeah.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
funny. I had no idea. I just discovered Triumph of Love. Like,
Wow.
Yeah, I was reading, which is, by the way, a crazy cast. Like, did you like? I had it's
Yeah.
like F. Murray Abraham and Betty Buckley
Yes, yeah.
and Susan Egan, Kevin Chamberlain, Roger Bart. Like, it's a nut. Chris Sieber, like crazy cast.
Yeah, and that show did their tryout in Baltimore, I guess, because he was working at Baltimore Center Stage. But, like,
How funny.
there were a bunch of shows that kind of came through Baltimore on their
So
way to
you
New
were a
York.
theater kid then?
I became a theater kid
Okay.
around this sort of like middle school into high school
Okay.
moment. I was more of a classical piano kid
Oh.
leading up to that, just because I played piano.
I was gonna say, how old were you when you started playing?
I started taking lessons when I was about 8.
Okay.
But had this funny thing where when I was very, very young, would just go up to pianos for no reason and start sounding things out.
Oh,
on
okay.
them.
Sure.
So I think my parents were like, we don't know what to do with this kid. He should be in piano
Yeah,
lessons."
right.
So I started with piano, but then I guess sort of in middle school, I joined the drama club and did like Oliver and Wizard of Oz and started falling in love with those songs and
that's
that
awesome.
music. Yeah.
And so did you feel like you wanted to be in these shows or be a part of them in some capacity? Like, did you want to act?
I did. I started out as an actor. Obviously,
Right.
in middle school, I was like acting in the shows, and then my degree from NYU is in performance. Like I went through down the acting road for a little bit, but by the time I graduated from college, had discovered the writing thing and knew that was really the thing that I
Aside
wanted
from
to do.
seeing shows at like Baltimore Center and stuff, when was the first time you came? Like, what was your first Broadway show?
The first Broadway show I saw was Beauty and the Beast. Speaking of Susan
Whoa.
Egan.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, I grew up in Baltimore, so New York wasn't too far away.
Right.
But at the same time,
Not super close either.
not super close. Yeah. So I forget the circumstances, but I just remember I had gotten to a point in my burgeoning theater nerddom that I was like, it's time for me to see a Broadway show. And so like begged my parents to take me to see a Broadway show, and Beauty and the Beast, I think at the time was sort of like the hot new show.
Of course.
And yeah, that was my first
Yeah.
show.
Do you remember the first show that you were a part of, that you were in? First musical that you did?
I remember, I don't think this was a musical, but the first show I remember being a part of was in elementary school.
Oh.
And we put on some kind of adaptation of a fairy tale about a prince who falls asleep for a very long time and then wakes up and he's an old man.
Oh.
And I was cast as the old man version of the prince. So like through the magic of theater, one little kid went to sleep and then woke up and was me with a long like cotton ball beard. My most vivid memory of that was being in the bathroom at the elementary school, like putting on the cotton ball beard, and feeling like I was transforming into the old.
Isn't it so weird? Like elementary school would be like that though. It's like you do shows that you'd be like I did a show in elementary school that was a twist on Oliver Twist, but it was a girl and it was called Olivia. And I thought that this was like an actual thing, but it totally is not. Like they just wrote it based on like the book. You know?
Totally.
Yeah.
I remember this is probably closer to high school, but there was a theater group in Baltimore that did a production of Fame, the musical.
Yeah.
But what I realized later is it wasn't actually Fame the musical. They literally just like took the screenplay of the movie and were like, we're putting it on stage.
Oh my gosh.
Like, it's so funny the theater that you do.
Yeah, right, exactly. So you went to how old were you when you decided that this was something that you were going to pursue and go to college for?
Yeah, I was in high school, so like I mentioned, I had started doing shows in middle school, just part of drama club, because I
Hmm.
thought it was fun.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that the public school system in Baltimore, the year I was going into high school, opened a brand new magnet school for the
Oh,
arts.
cool.
And I kind of thought, oh, I like this drama club thing. This new school could be really fun.
Mm.
So on a whim, I auditioned for the theater program at this new high school.
Oh.
And so wound up going to this magnet school for the arts where I was doing theater during the day and then playing piano and still doing my lessons at night, like after school.
Wow.
And that was in high school, I think, is where I really fell in love with theater and decided that, oh, this might be something I want to
Right.
pursue.
And because you were going for acting, did you go through the whole college audition route and audition for a
I
bunch
sure
of different...
did.
You did.
I sure did. I feel like I just had a visceral, physical response to that question because I haven't thought about it in so long. But
Right.
I vividly remember doing all of those auditions. Gosh, the two songs that I sang on, like doing the rounds for college were What You Own from Rent
Very cool.
and Lesson Number 8 from Sunday in the Park with George. Those are my like contrasting pieces.
Oh, they are. If nothing else, they are contrasting. They're certainly contrasting. That's funny though. And you made it into NYU.
I guess so. I guess
Yeah.
it worked. I guess
Yeah,
it
it did
worked.
work. Yeah. So, go sing lesson number 8.
Oh my God. Can you imagine?
Yeah. But so you went to NYU Tisch to get your BFA.
Yes.
And from what I understand, there was someone in particular who was pivotal in making it so that you found your voice a little bit more in composing. Can
Yeah.
you talk a little bit about David?
Yeah. So I had a teacher my freshman year who was teaching musical theater performance. His name was David Bucknam. He was our teacher, but outside of school, he was a composer. And I, because I played piano, I became that guy in our class who everyone, whenever they wanted to run their song, they'd say, hey, Adam, can you play through my song? Can we play through the song?
Yeah.
So there was one day where instead of class, we were having student teacher conferences, like sort of mid-semester check-ins or whatever. So the class was in a holding room in the studio next door, while one by one we went in to talk with David to get sort of a progress report on
Right.
how we were doing. And of course, everyone while we were waiting said, Adam, will you play my song? Will you play my song? I want to practice.
Yeah.
So I was just like playing piano nonstop. And then I went in for my conference and David said, was that you playing the piano in the next room? And I said, yeah, I was just playing through everyone's songs. And he suddenly got very serious. He was like a very kind of jovial, happy-go-lucky guy, but he got very serious. He like put down his coffee cup and looked me right in the eye and said, I hear more of your voice when you play the piano than I do when you're performing in class. Like, I feel like I know who you are hearing you play the piano, and I don't know who you are when you're performing.
Wow.
So he said, you should go see what that's about. There's something there. And as a 17-year-old freshman at NYU who had just committed to studying to be a performer, this was a very jarring, scary thing to hear. But at the same time, this teacher was someone who everyone was sort of drawn to because he could kind of see you for who you were and name it in a way that, like, that, that special gift that certain people and certain teachers have.
Yeah.
And so I took what he said to heart. And the kind of bittersweet twist of it all is he died that year. And at the end of the year, the school put on this memorial concert of all this music he had written, which we had never heard as his students. We knew that he was a composer, and we knew that he was a pretty accomplished composer, but it was sort of in the time before everything wound up on the internet or wound up recorded. And so we had just never heard any of his music. And the school put on this memorial concert with all of his music, and it was so inspiring. And I was going off to do summer stock that summer, and the theater at one point said, hey, we're going to put on a cabaret. If anyone wants to do anything in the cabaret, sign up. And I said, I'm gonna write a song. And that was the first time I wrote a song sort of with David's
Wow.
music in the back of my head, ringing in my
Wow.
ears.
That's crazy.
And very quickly I realized that, oh, this songwriting thing is what I really, really
Oh,
enjoy.
wow.
Yeah.
So it took you, I mean, it's something like a year to really dive into it.
Yeah. Because it wasn't until I feel like I had maybe dabbled in writing things just because I played piano, but the idea that I could write songs was something that really didn't occur to me until this teacher said, "You should
Right.
try it."
Right. And this is maybe a silly question, but did the material that you were resonating with as an actor also did that coincide with your knowledge of piano and like songwriting in the back of your brain? Does that make sense? Like your musical theater influences as an actor simultaneously working with your, influencing because of your piano history?
I think yes. And one of the other things that I think really opened my eyes to writing songs and writing theater songs was Audra McDonald's first album,
Mm,
which came out probably like around this very same time, like my freshman year of college.
mm,
And it introduced me, and I think introduced to the world, this group of writers like Jason Robert Brown and Adam Gettle and Michael John LaCusa, like all of these sort of new
right.
voices that
Right.
were doing something a little bit different,
Mm-hmm.
and that I, just as an actor and a theater fan, found really interesting.
Right. Right.
And I think that also cracked open something where it was like, oh, you can you can write songs about these kinds of characters,
Right.
and the music can kind of sound like this if you want to.
Yeah.
So that was
And when you're saying like the songs that you picked for your audition, it wasn't low hanging fruit. You know what I mean?
sure,
Like you were picking
yes,
pretty high level material. So
yes.
I imagine that was resonating with you, the Sondheim and Larson, and of it all.
Yeah, and I think that also had a lot to do with my teachers at this high school,
Yeah.
because what was fascinating was it was, like I said, my freshman year at this high school was the first year that the school existed.
Mm.
And because it was a magnet school for the arts, but it was also a public school and part of the public school system in Baltimore. So when they were hiring teachers for the school, they were pulling from teachers who were already teaching at public schools all around the district.
Mm.
But the teachers who were applying to teach at this art school were applying because they loved the arts, even if they were teaching math or physics or Spanish or whatever.
Right.
They loved the arts. A lot of them loved theater. A lot of them loved Sondheim in particular.
Right.
So I had all these teachers in all kinds of subjects that were just like obsessed with Stephen Sondheim.
Yeah.
and so
That's
and
awesome.
so yeah, I grew our high school did a production of Sunday in the Park with George that I was in. I mean, this is, I think, why I sang lesson number 8
Oh
for
my
my
God. Yeah.
college
Right.
auditions,
Right.
because I was literally in the show in high
Right.
school. I did not play George because I was not a tenor. Um, but yeah, it was just this environment in high
Right.
school that was introducing us to all of these sort of off the beaten path
Yeah. That's
kind of
awesome.
writers. Yeah.
So now you decide to pursue songwriting. Where do you go from there?
That's a great question. I graduated from college and
With your acting degree.
with my acting degree, and just started seeking out any kind of opportunity I could find to do a master class or a workshop or anything like that.
Hmm.
And at the time, it sadly doesn't exist anymore, but there was a wonderful organization called Musical Theater Works
Hmm.
that was, I think, partly dedicated to developing new musicals, but they also had this education component where they would put together these masterclass writing workshop type things with like fancy writers, and
Oh, very cool.
you could sign up and spend 2 months studying with Adam Gettle,
Whoa.
which I did,
Whoa.
or come and spend a month with Lynn Ahrens and Stephen Flaherty. And one of the one that I did with Lynn Ahrens and Stephen Flaherty, I think that one it was a month long program. Like once a week you would meet, and every week they had a different writer come and you would play songs and they'd give you feedback, that kind of stuff. And so one of the weeks was Lynn Ahrens and Stephen Flaherty, and I played a couple songs. And as I was leaving, it was held in this like black box theater space. As I was leaving, kind of walking down the aisle to leave the theater, I felt someone grab my arm like really, really hard. And I turned around and it was Lynn Ahrens. And she said, "Give me your phone number." And I was like, oh, okay. So I gave Lynn Ahrens my phone number, and
I'm sorry. One more. What, did you?
right, I know, right? What? And a few weeks later, she called, and we started this like mentor-mentee relationship with both Lynn and Stephen, and they ran this program called the Dramatist Guild Fellows Program, which still exists. I don't think they run it anymore.
Yeah.
But it's a year-long program for emerging musical theater writers and emerging playwrights.
Wow.
There are 5 musical theater writers and 5 playwrights in a cohort.
Right.
And you basically spend a year together bringing in work and sharing it, and they bring in like very fancy people to give you feedback. And that program is where I wrote Ordinary Days. I basically like brought in, I think every 2 weeks I would bring in a new song, and then by the end of it, I essentially had the first draft of what would become.
That is
Ordinary Days.
crazy.
Yeah.
This is such a general question, but like, what would you say are the biggest things that you gained out of working with them, as a writer, having spent so much time with them?
Yeah, I mean, 2 things leap to mind. One is a very practical, like writing thing, which is about specificity, and that funny thing where the more specific you write a character and a situation, the more relatable it becomes to other people, which is very counterintuitive.
Yeah.
But it's something that I really felt, especially writing Ordinary Days, which I remember when I brought in the song "I'll Be Here" for the first time to this writers group, and I was feeling like, oh, there's so many random details in this story. It's so particular to this character. Like, is there any way that anyone is gonna relate to it other than seeing this as a story of this one particular woman in this very particular situation?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that shocked me was when people started commenting on it, each person in the group found one detail that like really connected with their life. So it wasn't about necessarily like all the pieces of the story connecting to everyone, but every single person had a way in because of one very specific detail. And I think that was something that Lynn was really trying to teach us in this program, is that if you can be specific, it's actually that specificity that resonates out to people because it makes it feel true. It makes it feel real.
Right.
And that's what people kind of respond to.
Yeah.
So that was one thing. And the other thing was, they always said, you have to write what you believe in and what you feel is important, and trust that other people out in the world are going to believe that it's meaningful and believe that it's important as well.
Right.
Which I think was a really valuable piece of advice, because I think it's so easy to feel like, oh, I have to write toward this trend, or everyone is doing this, so I should be doing this too, or this idea is really popular right now, and how can I contort myself to write something that fits into this idea? And I think what they were saying is, trust your instincts and trust your voice, and if you think it's worthwhile, other people are gonna think it's worthwhile too. And again, that's that kind of authenticity, I think, is what people are gonna respond to and connect to at the end of the day.
Right. Well, especially in regards to like, just commercialism in general, is like you want, because you want your work to reach a certain audience and success as well. You also sometimes, like we had Joe Iconis on and we asked him the same question, and I'd love to ask you the same thing, is like, how much do you feel sometimes the idea to skew something to make it more commercial because, for a variety of reasons, I would imagine that there's something that can be strangely attractive or appealing to the idea of writing something that I think just everybody will just get this, or this will be something that is much more, commercial, versus something that's maybe a little bit more true.
It's a fascinating dance that I feel like we do as writers to navigate this whole thing, because I think with anything I'm writing, whether the world deems it super commercial or not, I feel like I'm writing it for a reason that I like believe really strongly in and want to communicate that to as many people as possible. And it's funny, I was working on a project once that was commissioned by a really big kind of like commercial institution. I wouldn't even say producer, it was like an institution. And we did a reading of the piece and had like a post-mortem afterwards, not just with the producers who commissioned it, but with like marketing people at this institution to kind of like talk about the piece. And I was pretty early in my career and was genuinely curious about what does it actually mean for something to be quote unquote commercial, like what, and I asked that question in this postmortem, particularly to the marketing person. I was like, what makes something commercial to you? And her response, it was really interesting. She was saying that, she tends to look for projects that have as many different ways to connect to different groups of people as possible. So, for example, she was talking about if she's putting together a creative team for a piece, part of the, I think, thinking behind, can we find a songwriter from the pop world and a book writer from the theater world? Because it's like, there's a group of people who,
both voids.
Exactly. There's a group of people who will be excited about the theater person. There's a group of people who will be excited about the pop songwriter. And so I just thought that was a really fascinating idea. And so whenever I'm trying to find my way into a piece, it always has to start from a deeply, deeply personal, very specific place for me. And once I can figure out what that connection is, then I think it's fun to try and tease out, okay, I feel this way about this idea or this project. Is this how other people connect to it? Is this feeling that I'm feeling something that's accessible to other people in other ways? And I will say it's hard. I often lean on collaborators like producers and directors to help me zoom out a little bit when I'm like thinking about these kinds of things, because I'm always going to come at something from a very personal place. And I feel like I've found colleagues and collaborators who I think are really good at helping me translate this very personal thing that I have into something that's a little more universally articulated, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
So it's funny. It's like I find I'm focused really on the personal stuff when I'm writing the thing, and then when it's ready to be shared with the world, that's when I lean on collaborators to say,
see the bigger picture.
Yeah, hey, what's the bigger picture here?
Yes.
What am I? You're obviously responding to something I'm doing from a very personal place. What is that about for you? And automatically that's like a broader view because it's outside of myself.
Totally. So Michelle, I imagine, produced the show as well when it was at Keene.
Yes, she came in. Keene is a nonprofit Off Broadway company, and Michelle came in as like a sort of commercial producer enhancement type figure.
The show we should mention is All the World's a Stage, which produced which was Off Broadway this spring. I was like, I didn't mention that, and the album comes out this Friday. And so tell me, I guess what I want to ask you is a couple of things, because with Ordinary Days, when did that album come about? Was it after the production, after the first initial production as well?
Yes, yeah. So we did that show at Roundabout Theater Company, and the album came out of that production. I think that production ran in the fall slot at Roundabout. So
Mhm.
sort of like, September to the end of the year kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I have a memory of recording the album that spring. So like a few months after the run had ended.
Right. And did you feel at the time like it was the hit that it feels like it is now?
No, I
Okay.
mean it was part of this program at Roundabout, which is amazing.
Yeah.
That is specifically designed to give writers their New York debut. So you can't have been produced in New York,
Mm.
and it's really meant to kind of nurture a writer through their first production in New York City because there's a lot of pressure that
Right.
goes along with that. It can be really daunting. Um, and so we did, and because of that, in a wonderful way, you feel very protected.
Right. Right.
They really sort of hold your hand and teach you how to be a writer through a preview process,
Mm.
through doing press interviews, through having reviewers come
Right.
and print reviews about the show. Like all of this stuff, if you're going through it for the first time,
Right.
can be very scary.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, in a really smart way, they designed this program to kind of teach writers how to
Right.
navigate all that stuff. And so it it I think because of that sort of protection, that bubble, I really had everything that happened was completely unexpected and brand new to me.
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
idea of recording a cast album
Well, I
was
was gonna say,
like
was the program? Did the program also spawn the cast album, or what spawned the cast album?
no, yeah, they the at the time the head of R&H Theatricals,
Mm-hmm.
the licensing company, was the legendary Ted Chapin.
Mm. Yeah,
And
of course. Yeah.
he came to see the show and decided that he wanted R&H to license the show.
Wow.
And as part of that deal, he felt it was really important to make an album because that's how
Things
people would
become immortal.
know the show
Yeah.
existed.
Right.
And so yeah, it just all sort of happened because of Ted.
And that's amazing. And
Yeah.
also, I think what's special about cast albums, and this is in the same regard to what we're talking about with All the World's a Stage here, is like, well, cast albums immortalize a
Yeah.
piece, and their Ordinary Days was off Broadway for a couple months, but the cast album is the reason why it spawned productions all over the world.
Exactly,
Right? Like,
yeah.
like all over the 6 continents that it's been on,
Yeah.
Buenos Aires. I was like, oh my gosh. But cast albums is a big reason, maybe even the biggest reason why that happens. I guess, what are you thinking about when doing a cast album? This could be with Ordinary Days and now All the World's a Stage. What are you thinking about cutting? What are you thinking about changing? What are you thinking about where you go like, this needs to stay in and needs to stay in this way because it'll tell the better story for the sake of the album?
Yeah, it is a process to figure out what goes on the album because I think I want an album to do two things. One, I want it to be a glimpse of the show, and for people who might not know anything about the show, I want them to leave listening to the cast album with an idea of what the story was or what what happened in the
Right,
show, who the
right.
people are. And at the same time, I want the album to be its own satisfying experience. Even if you might not get every single detail of
Right.
what happens in the show.
Right.
And so balancing those two things is really, I mean, it's kind of trial and error. There were things I had, of course, sort of planned out the edits of what I wanted to include on the album to meet those two goals. But even in the studio, I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like we need this dialogue here, and like we threw it in sort of last minute. Like it felt very in the moment in an exciting way. And then even as we're doing the post-production and editing, stuff that I thought I wanted to include, I wound up cutting because I was like, oh no, we don't actually need this for the listening experience of the
Interesting.
album. So yeah, there was a lot of planning that went into what I thought was going to be included, but then kind of like everything else about putting on a new musical, as you do it, you're like, oh, this doesn't feel right anymore. Let's try
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
It was really kind of
And
dynamic in that
I
way.
wonder in the same breath, on the opposite side of that with the album is like, because in future productions of it, you don't necessarily want to be tied to the album, but you're using it as this foundation, right?
Sure. Well, and that was our orchestrator, Michael Starobin, who's done many a cast album. His philosophy was, he was like, this is what's going to teach other theaters how to do the show.
Right.
So there's that layer to it as
Yes.
well, in terms of like, you want to make sure you're locked into the tempo that you've got.
Yeah.
And even, I mean, what I was talking about with some of the actors is, not to add this layer of pressure, but like, people are going to copy what you do on the album.
Yeah.
I've seen it happen. Like,
Yeah.
I can tell when I hear people sing some of my songs which recording
They've heard
they've
which
learned
versions.
the songs from, because there are little like
Yeah.
nuances or even some like incorrect notes here and there
Right.
that I'm like, oh, you learned it from this recording, because that's how
Oh,
she
that's
sings
so
it on this one.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is that funny thing. It's like you want it to be a guidebook in a way to like what your vision for the show is.
Right.
But then at the same time, one of the best things about writing for theater is you make something and then you hand it off to other people,
Yeah.
and they're going to put their own stamp on it.
Right.
And that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's super flexible in that way.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, I'm like, where do I go from here? Because I want to ask you about, in regards to Ordinary Days, I want to ask you about, because you've been removed from it in the regard that it's been off for so long
Yeah.
in its original production. Do you ever look back, especially because of the cast album, and go, from the lens that you have now, oh, I'd like to change, or I'd like to tweak, or I'd like to...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't listened to the cast album in a really long time.
Oh, yeah? Yeah.
But what's interesting is, so Keen Company,
Mhm.
who produced All the World's a Stage,
Mhm.
I kind of got to know them many years before, because they did a revival of Ordinary Days back in, I want to say 2017, 2018.
Yes.
And I was involved a little bit for this very reason, because I sat there listening to, the first read through and the first day, and was like, oh, there's some things that I can do better now.
Yeah,
I'm older, hopefully a little wiser.
Sure.
And so I made some revisions for that.
Oh,
for
yeah.
that production. And it was fun. It's funny, every time I go see a production of Ordinary Days, I get nervous that like I'll feel like I've outgrown it, or like, oh, that was like younger me that I don't stand by anymore.
Right.
But it knock on wood, it hasn't happened yet. Like I watch it and I go, oh yeah, I stand by this.
Yes.
I still
yeah, well,
believe in
that's
this.
great, especially considering the fact that it was, it was one of the first things you wrote, and it was a success pretty early on, for the most part, at least.
Yeah.
But
yeah, to your point, I think there are definitely things that I watch and go, oh, I would maybe do that a little
right.
differently, or a little more artfully now, or something.
Yeah. When you write a musical, are there songs that or you go into, I should say, writing, saying to yourself, well, this is going to be the, for lack of a better term, title song, or this is going to be the song that everyone puts in their book, or this is going to be the, the single, the things like that. Like right now, I guess it's like on the World Stage, it's like kind of like Pieces Together is like the big song that was put out early. Do you go in knowing that that's going to be that thing, or,
I don't. And it's always a surprise.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm really bad at guessing.
Oh, is
which
that
is
right?
going to be the breakout, the breakout song.
Right.
Which is kind of great. Like
Yeah.
there's something kind of magical about seeing people respond to something in a way that you never anticipated.
Right.
And there's something great about the idea that you can't really predict anything in this world.
Yeah, well, it's true.
yeah.
Yeah, and I guess, so then who does make those decisions on the album? That, okay, this is going to be the quote unquote waving through a window of the, of the album.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's lots of conversations between myself, obviously, and Michelle, who produced the album, Joy Machine Records, who are the record label. I think the label especially has a lot of experience in putting albums out and
Right.
seeing kind of, is there a pattern to what resonates, what hooks people for
Mm-hmm.
kind of a first listen.
Right.
And so I think in our case, you know, finding something that feels kind of up tempo and energetic to like grab people's attention for the first moments
Right.
of things. But yeah, it is a conversation, and I even feel like you don't leave that conversation with a definitive, this is definitely going to be the song that people will respond to. It's just that
Yeah.
you've kind of gone down a thought experiment of like, okay, if it was this song, people
Yeah.
could respond for these reasons, or if it's this song, people might respond for these reasons, and
Right.
it's just kind of all a guessing game at the end of
Yeah.
the day.
Yeah. 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 It's just interesting. Um, in discussing all the worlds of stage, how long have you been writing this piece, and how did it come to you?
Yeah, this one happened pretty quickly, I have to say.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I had this relationship with Keen Company,
Yeah.
and I knew for a long time their now former artistic director, Jonathan Silverstein, he just, although Worlds of Stage was the last show he directed at Keen, he was there for 12 years, I
Oh
think,
wow.
and then just decided to move on. But when he joined the company, he really wanted to have them start doing musicals because
Mm-hmm.
their mission statement is basically to do intimate shows. And so they were doing intimate plays. Johnny came along and said, hey, there are intimate musicals out there too. So he started doing shows like John and Jen and Tick Tick Boom,
Right.
Marry Me a Little.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he did Ordinary Days as part of that. And then said, you know, my real dream for the company is to be able to commission a new intimate musical, because as someone whose job it was to find these shows and program them every year, he was like, the well's starting to run a little dry, and wouldn't it be great for to along with our mission to
Yeah.
like put a new one into the world that other people could do
Right.
too.
Right.
And at that point, he was still sort of figuring out how he could make that a reality, because new musicals, as you can imagine, take a lot of time and resources. You have to be intentional about them. And so fast forward a few years to like the middle of the pandemic, I got a call from Johnny, and he said, I think we're ready. I think we can green light this new
Oh,
musical.
cool.
So what's on your mind? What do you want to write about? And like I said, it was the middle of the pandemic. Theater was shut down.
Yeah.
And so one of the things on my mind was theater, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But in particular, I felt like, because all of the kind of professional pressures and the like showbiz of it all was kind of on hiatus because there was no theater happening.
Right.
I was reflecting and reconnecting with what really made me fall in love with theater in the first place, like as this high school kid, that the really personal connection that I forged
Right.
with theater. And of course I was thinking about my high school teachers, because those are the people who taught me what
Started
theater could
this.
do.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then also at that same moment, there were all those conversations and those laws being passed, specifically about gay and lesbian and queer teachers,
Mm-hmm.
and what parts of themselves they could bring into the classroom, and what kinds of materials they could teach and histories they
Mm-hmm.
could teach. And because that was happening, and because I was also thinking about my own high school teachers, I had this kind of light bulb moment where I was like, oh my gosh, I bet some of my high school teachers were gay and I didn't know it,
Right.
because it was the late 90s. People just didn't really talk about it. And that got me thinking, if I had known one of my teachers was gay, how would my experience as a teenager been different? Would it have been, as someone who was sort of like discovering my own identity,
Mm-hmm.
would that have made things easier? Would it have made things more complicated? And that question is sort of what got the story in my head
Right.
for All the World is Stage.
Right. Yeah. So how long did it take to come to fruition then?
I spent probably a year and a half writing the first draft.
Okay.
And then because Keane had laid the groundwork very intentionally they wanted to commission the show, they wanted to develop it, and ostensibly, if I didn't screw things up, they wanted to produce it.
Yeah.
And so I would say from that from the phone call from Johnny with the commission to starting rehearsals for the production was like 3.5 years.
Oh, wow.
Which is
Wow.
really, really fast
Yeah.
for a musical.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
really, really fast. But I'm grateful for it.
Yeah.
Like it's rare to get the opportunity to just write something and then do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And what now inspired then making this cast album? Because that in and of itself feels like a jump and a stamp of like, okay, like we discussed, like this is what I want to put out into the world. This is how I want this show to be, perceived and received semi permanently. Because on one hand, it's gonna exist in that capacity.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it honestly was, I wrote the show, we developed it, we put it up, and the response to the show was really overwhelming and like beyond even like my wildest hopes and dreams for it. Like there was something about the show that people really connected with.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a kind of momentum that was happening when the production was up, and we knew from the beginning that it was a limited run, like we couldn't extend, like this was it. And so we were like, maybe we should talk about making an album so that other people can discover it.
Mm-hmm.
And with great kudos to our producer Michelle, who was part of making the production happen, once those conversations started, she very quickly stepped in and said, "I 100% agree that we need to make this album so that other people can hear the show and so that other communities and other theaters know that the show exists, and
Right.
they can bring the story to whoever wants and needs it."
Right.
And so once we all kind of said yes, we just got the ball rolling, and here we are.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I should also mention our dearest Matt Rodin and Elizabeth Stanley are both in All the World Stage and on the album. And I want to ask you when, because you've assembled like an all-star team here. And I want to ask you how the work changes when you bring them into the equation, and what things you start to see differently and whatnot.
Yeah, it's really amazing. I think one thing that people might not be super aware of, especially around a brand new musical,
right,
is that, for me anyway, I really feel like I don't fully grasp who the characters are, who these people are, until I see them embodied by an actor.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of information obviously that I've thought about and I put into the writing of these characters, but when they finally come to life embodied by a person, that's when I, for the first time, understand truly and deeply like who these characters are. And so the casting of a new musical is so fun in that way, because I think people and actors especially might assume coming into an audition that the creative team knows exactly what they're looking for,
right,
and I should try to be exactly what the creative team is looking for. But in fact, the opposite is true. I come into a casting session for a new musical with so many questions, and then you just see someone like Matt, and his audition for All the World's a Stage is one of the greatest, most memorable auditions that I've experienced, just because he really came into the room and he was obviously prepared, but he was also so full of a sense of play and a curiosity to discover who this character was and what this piece was, that his audition to me felt like we were in rehearsal. It was so much fun, and I was learning something about the character as we were working with him, and like that kind of conversation that happens between an actor and a writer and the material is really what the rehearsal process of a new musical is
Right.
about. And
Right.
so being able to get a glimpse of that in Matt's audition, I was like, oh, this is exactly, not only is he the guy, but this is the process that we want
Yeah.
to like figure out
Yeah.
who this character is.
Right. Right.
So yeah, so I feel like I have many questions actually on my mind when I'm watching actors audition,
Yeah.
and the actors that bring something to the table that either answer one of those questions or spark a new idea, like, oh gosh, I never thought this about the character, but that's a really
That's interesting.
interesting aspect.
Right, right. I was gonna ask you in as well. Like I read this thing John Kander talked about once, which was like music sometimes that people don't realize why it's there, and that could be incidental music. That's because we actually this set piece is taking a little bit extra
Totally.
to come off stage, so we have to add an extra 25 seconds of incidental music. How often do you find those things happening as well in the middle of the production, where you're like, oh, actually, people don't know that the reason why, especially in something like Ordinary Days, where now it's frozen. It's like, oh, people don't know that 20 seconds or that phrase is there because we had a hard time doing X, Y, and Z. You know?
Oh, totally. No,
Yeah.
it's really funny. And the other thing that I feel like people don't necessarily realize is the keys of songs are just set on the original cast.
Yeah.
Like a song is in a particular key in the materials because the actor who originated that part sounded really good on those notes.
Right. Right.
And that's literally why it's
Yeah.
in that key.
Well, how passionate are you when you're writing about it? How married are you to the actual? I mean, not melody lines, say, but like in specific notes. If something sounds different on Matt, or if something resonates more in his voice, how married are that to that material are you? Especially when it comes to casting.
Yeah.
And when you're listening to them go through the passes of the material, are you going, I don't think that he'd be capable of living up there as much as I'd like him to, so I'm gonna adjust, or I don't think he's right for the thing.
I'm always about, if you find the right person with the right, I mean, you want a certain vocal ability to be able to kind of navigate what you've written, but I'm all about changing the key and even changing the melody or harmonies sometimes to make that performer shine. I mean, at the end of the day, if the performer sounds good, you sound good.
Yes, this is true.
And there are a number of instances in All the World's a Stage where I mean, Matt Rodin has an insane voice.
Yeah, he sure does.
So there are
He sure does.
there are a bunch of stuff that I kind of tailor made for him in the show. Same with Elizabeth Stanley, who also has just an insane
incredible
voice.
Her voice is unbelievable. Yeah.
But yeah, to me that is like a really fun part of the process. It's like making a bespoke suit on someone.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Did you write the book for All the World Stage as well?
I did.
Talk to me about, what do you prefer? Do you prefer writing the book, and do you prefer this hands-on lyrics, music book, or do you prefer someone else writing it?
I would say most of the projects I've worked on, I have been the songwriter, so music and lyrics, and then collaborating with a book writer.
Right.
This was actually the first time I wrote everything since Ordinary Days, where I also wrote everything. And I think part of it was this particular story that I wanted to tell felt really personal, and so I felt like I knew the story and knew the characters in the story well enough that I could tackle everything. And the other thing was, I felt like I had spent so many years since Ordinary Days collaborating with these incredible playwrights that I was like, I've learned so much. Maybe I should try this. And it definitely was a step outside of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
But everything about the situation, being able to collaborate really closely with Keen Company and with Jonathan, who directed the show, I felt like it was the right environment to take that risk and take a step outside the comfort zone.
Right. And what's next for All the World's a Stage? Do we know yet? Is there anything out there?
The album is coming out very soon. It will be...
By the time this is out, it'll already be out.
Oh, great. Amazing. Go listen.
Yeah.
It hasn't been announced yet, but it will be available for licensing. And
Oh,
so
very
I think
cool.
there will be some theaters that it might pop up at.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Next season.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And like I said, just the response to the run in the spring was so overwhelming and encouraging that our producer Michelle is sort of like putting out feelers like, could this have a continued life in New York? Who knows? And I don't know if that'll happen or not. But like I said, I think we were really encouraged and invigorated by the response to it, and we're just gonna see where it takes us.
Yeah, that's exciting. That's awesome. I love that. I want to ask you a couple of we do this thing that we always do on the podcast, which is Mount Rushmore musicals. I want to ask you for your Mount Rushmore musicals. And Mount Rushmore is 4, but we're gonna give you 5 musicals that are like everything to you, that are your Mount Rushmore.
Wow. All right. 5. All right. Just gonna go with my gut.
Yeah.
Sunday in the Park with George.
Yeah.
Fiddler on the Roof.
Mm-hmm.
Cabaret. Yeah. Light in the Piazza. West Side Story.
That's an epic. That might be the best 5 we've had.
Whoa.
That was really good.
Whoa.
Oh wow, that was great. Right? I love that. I'll take it. We'll see what TikTok thinks of that one. I think they'll eat it up. People have such strange opinions. There are musicals that I did not know that are on people's Mount Rushmore. So who knows?
Wow.
That people will comment stuff and you're like, oh, okay. You know, I love that one though. That was great. And then I want to ask you some state of the industry stuff. Like, what have you seen lately that you really liked? What are you looking forward to? And you were also, if I'm right, you were on the Tony nominating committee a couple years back.
I
right?
was.
Yeah. So what was that like?
It was amazing. I mean, like I felt like a kid in a candy store.
Yeah.
It was, you get to be on the nominating committee for a 3-year stint.
Right.
And the years that I did it, it was like the Hamilton, Dear Evan Hansen.
I was
going
to
to
say it was 15 to 18. That was killer.
It was a really great moment to get to see all the
theater.
shows.
Yeah. Well, also that season, the 16-17 season in particular, was just, I think that was the most musicals that had been on Broadway since like the 80s.
Oh wow.
Yeah, because that was the Come From Away, Dear Evan Hansen, Groundhog Day,
sure,
Great Comet. I think there was those 4 were best musical.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, so to that point about state of the industry, what have you seen lately? What are you digging? And what are you looking forward to?
I mean, maybe Happy Ending I'm obsessed with.
Of course.
I think it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just kind of it bowled me over. Everything. It felt like one of those things where the writing and the production and the performances all just came together seamlessly. Because I think one of the things that you learn very quickly when you are creating new musicals for a living is like, if even one element of the show is out of balance, it can make it can sort of topple the whole thing. And so I think it's so beautiful that production came together in a way that made this incredibly intimate, sensitive, beautiful show also feel kind of big and dazzling and
spectacular.
And how hard it can be for a new musical to, especially an original new musical, to kind of catch the public attention in that way. And the patience that it takes and the risk that it takes for something to like build the momentum that it needs to get rolling. Right.
And for the town to discover it in that same capacity.
Yeah. Sure.
I want to ask you about I want to go back to 2 things real quick. Because I want to geek out to you a little bit about Fine, because I just love that song. I just love that song. And I think that what's really special about that song and your work as a whole, and what I really appreciate about it, is how unique everyone's voices are musically. Because what I really like about Fine is that it feels like it could just be spoken word. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? The conversation there is seamless, which then as an actor makes it so easy to do the work because we're just talking. You know what I mean?
Oh, I
It
love
just
that.
happens to be on a pitch. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
very, but it's very, it feels almost very subconscious. And I guess with that song, how much you were thinking about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the conversational elements of things is something that is a part of my work in general.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, I don't know if I have a a super articulate reason why, or a moment that I decided that that was something I'm interested in.
Right.
It just sort of happened. Like
Yeah.
that's sort of like the kind of things that I like to write.
Right.
And yeah, I will. Fine is one of two songs that I've ever written where I was kind of with Fine. I literally just like sat up in bed at 3 in the morning one morning and was like, "Oh my gosh, I know what the song is. I have
Oh,
to write
really?
it right now." And that's only happened two times in like all of
Wow.
the songs that I've written. But that was one that just was kind of this lightning bolt of like,
Yeah.
I hear the whole thing. I just have to write it down.
Right.
But yeah, no, I love. It makes me so happy to hear that from an actor's
Oh,
perspective.
absolutely.
It's easy
And
to find
I don't
your
know.
way
Do you
in.
know the song Country House? Have you ever heard the song Country House? It's a Sondheim piece. It's a Follies cut song.
Oh, I don't know if I do know
And
this.
Fine is the closest thing to that song it's actually Julie Andrews did it in putting it together.
Oh wow.
And it's just this fascinating song that when I heard Fine, I was like, oh my, well, when I heard Country House, because I heard that after Fine, I was like, this has a very similar energy. And that's the type of like musical theater that I just like eat up because of that exact thing is that it feels incredibly conversational and just like, it's almost as if I'm not even doing it. I'm just talking the way I'm talking to you now,
Yeah.
but there's music that's fulfilling the void of that story and lifting it up. You know?
Yeah.
So that's just something I appreciate about that song so much. And I want to ask you too is like when how do you decide what needs to be musicalized within a musical? Especially within an original musical, where do you decide? You know, it's like a silly question to say, where do you put the songs? But
Yeah.
like, where do you put the songs? Well, how do you know that this is going to be something that's worth musicalizing?
Yeah, I mean, I think you always have to think when you're thinking about scenes, because I think it always even before songs exist, it starts from figuring out what are the building blocks of this story, what are the different scenes that happen to tell the story. Like it's more big picture stuff.
Right.
And I think one thing that you have to have in the back of your mind the whole time is that every scene wants to build to some place emotional enough to feel like it earns a song.
Right.
And so I guess I'm really thinking about emotionally, like how are the stakes building enough for the characters to feel like they
Yeah.
burst into song.
Right.
And often I find myself thinking when I'm first starting a project, if I can imagine how the 11 o'clock number happens, like sort of the most emotional, most high stakes, most climactic part of the story, if I know what that is and I know how to write it, I feel like everything else will kind of fall into place.
Oh, that's
But if I
interesting.
don't know what that moment is, then I feel really unsure about
Right.
how to musicalize this story.
Right.
Because I think there's a kind of, what I love about writing musicals is it feels like there's a kind of momentum to them. And it has to do with this kind of 11 o'clock number thing. Like the whole evening is just rolling to this big musical moment.
Right.
And if you can have a sense of how you're getting there,
Yeah.
that to me gives me a kind of clarity about what the songs need to be in order to build a character's emotional journey up to that climactic moment.
That's interesting. Do you worry sometimes that a certain song that precedes the 11 o'clock will have too high of stakes that it could demean it? The 11 o'clock?
Sometimes, and I feel like sometimes you have to recalibrate once those pieces come in. If you feel like a song is overshadowing that 11 o'clock
What
moment,
is the most important moment here?
Yeah. At the same time, I feel like a lot of the rewriting process is embracing the higher stakes and the deeper emotions that you discover along the way. Because I think as you write a show, hopefully your understanding only gets deeper and more emotional. And so not being afraid if that means that you're in a deeper, more emotional place earlier in the story.
Mm-hmm.
Go with that and try to figure out an even bigger, more high stakes, more emotional thing for the
Yes.
11 o'clock number.
Right.
Sort of not being afraid to embrace those big emotions that musicals
Yes.
sometimes
And that's like the
elicit.
point of why
Yeah.
they're singing.
Yeah,
So it's like it's only fitting that would be, the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. How much do you feel that your acting in what we're talking in the same vein of what we're talking about? How much do you feel that your acting background influenced the way you write?
Oh gosh. Well, I think one of the reasons I got so excited when you said that a song like Fine feels easy for an actor to find their way in is
Yeah.
because I think I, as an actor, was probably not so great.
Oh, really?
And when I had to perform pieces that required the actor to do more of the work,
Mm,
it felt really like kind of an uphill
that's interesting.
battle.
Yes.
And I think maybe one of the reasons why I loved performing things like the Sondheim stuff was that it almost felt like you're saying there's something built in there. Like
Yeah.
if you, on a baseline level, if you just sing the song, it's gonna tell the story.
Well, I was gonna say the music is incredibly informative as to what you're meant to do here.
Yeah.
And in a way that still feels unlimited.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
And so I think when I'm writing, I am trying to build in those elements or those clues or those tools or whatever for an actor to use to be able to help them
Right.
tell the story. I think about, what's the beat shift that happens between the first verse and the second verse, because
Mm-hmm.
the actor has to keep singing. And so why are they still singing?
Yes.
There has to be something unfinished
Something
or a
motivating,
new kind of obstacle that's introduced. So like I guess I am thinking like an actor in that way when I'm writing songs.
Right. And are you thinking, is there too, how are you thinking about the formation, because so many pop songs, and with a big pop influx that's coming into musical theater in many different ways, there's a lot of the time there's the is it AABA, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
the verse and the pre-chorus and the chorus, and then we go into the second verse and and the bridge and whatnot. Is there something to that form that's attractive, or does it just depend on the piece and what you're trying to say?
Yeah, I think there is something attractive about it because I think the idea of repetition that becomes a big part of those kinds of song structures, like you have a chorus that like keeps
Yeah.
going back and is the same every
Yeah.
time. I think that actually is a huge opportunity for actors, for example, to like really play a journey within that repetition. Like you're
Right.
not going to sing it the same way
Yeah.
each time. I love watching orchestrators and arrangers work because I think they have a really intuitive sense in those repetitive structures how to
Diversify.
build something.
Right.
And I love seeing show. I remember seeing this when I saw Shucked, which I was obsessed with.
Yeah, it was great.
And also Swept Away, like two shows that were written by songwriters who are coming from the pop world, but in collaboration with arrangers from the Broadway world.
Right.
And the way that those arrangements, obviously in very different ways between those two shows, but could take those pop song structures and build them into what felt like Broadway production numbers. I thought it was so amazing and so skillful.
Yeah. And two, like what's interesting too is hearing the story within the song and how by the end of the song you're trying to land somewhere that is conclusive to a degree.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And yeah, I think that's super interesting. It's very geeky, but
we love geeky.
Yes, right, exactly. Yes, that's why we're here. We have a tradition on the podcast where we always ask our guests to manifest a dream guest for us to have. And we've gotten a lot. We've been lucky to have some on. We've had Jerry Zaks, who someone manifested for us, and we're still looking to get some dream guests like Debbie Allen, or but manifest anyone that that's living. That comes to your brain.
Oh my gosh. Because we've just been speaking about orchestrators and arrangers.
Yeah.
I'm going to manifest Michael Starobin.
Okay, great.
Who happened to do the orchestrations for All the World's a Stage.
Yeah.
But it was also a collaborator of Sondheim and Tom Kitt and all these amazing people.
Awesome.
And he also, the reason why I bring him up is he is also a teacher and loves talking about this kind of stuff.
Okay, perfect.
And
okay, perfect.
I feel like he'd be a really interesting person to have on because his brain, he's writing orchestration, so he's writing for the band, but he has the writer and the writing in mind. He has the actors in mind because he wants the instruments to support the performance that the actor is giving and also stay out of the way of the vocal, and when the actor needs to be more present than the band. He's just really adept at like considering all the elements that come into play. So
yeah.
I will
okay, great.
that.
Yeah, I love that. I'll take it. I'll take it. And with this album coming out, with All the World's a Stage coming out, what are you most excited? What do you want people to take away the most? What is the thing that that you're most excited about with this album?
I think honestly, I get very excited when a new original musical is able to be put out into the world.
Yes.
And so I hope that people take that risk and listen to something that they might not know what it's about and connect to it and share it with other people.
It's super exciting, and I think that you know, your work is super exciting because I do consider it a higher level material. And also what I've really liked about what I've listened to All the World's a Stage is that exact thing, that story throughout the song, and that I'm able to listen to the two pieces that are already out now while we're doing this, and go like, oh, I understand what this is about, and I understand the story that's being communicated. Amazing. Which is a testament to you and Matt and Elizabeth and everyone in the cast. And so yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
We end the podcast with the same question every time, and it is, we started by asking you who your I want to be like you as a kid was, and we want to end by asking who is your I want to be like you now. And it could be anyone, it could be someone in your life, it doesn't have to be a celebrity, whoever you like.
I want to be like Lisa Brescia, who originated the role of Claire in Ordinary Days. She's the one that sings I'll Be Here on the album. She is simply one of the best humans on the planet.
Oh, yeah.
And does this wonderful thing where she has had this amazing career. She's so talented, but in the way that she lives her life, I think puts her humanness first, and still performs on Broadway and like does all the things. But a few years ago said, you know, I really want to give back. I want to teach, and like went back to school herself because she had always been working professionally, never went back to school. She went back to school, and now she runs a musical theater program in Missouri.
Very cool.
And is like helping train the next generation. And I just think she has such a groundedness and a selflessness about her that I really admire. And so if I can be like that, I will be a happy human.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for setting it up. And we look forward to listening to All the World's a Stage.
Amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, Adam Gwon. I Want to Be Like You with Elbi Cespedes is produced by Elbi and Christian Cespedes. Special thanks to Angelina Cespedes, Dan Fortune, Vincenzo Salvatore Cakes, and of course, Adam Gwon.